Good day, morning, evening. Please delete as appropriate. Hi there, welcome to another episode of Kodsnack. I'm Fredrik, and in this episode, which we recorded at DevSum in Stockholm in 2019, we talked to Heather Wilde about burnout, seeing the effects, suffering it yourself, and perhaps even more importantly to many of us, detecting the signs in others and ourselves, and maybe trying to prevent it in the first place. Heather describes herself as Unicorn Whisperer, which is an excellent title, something I could aspire to. And she also recommends some really nice PSVR games and talks a bit about Antarcticonf, a really cool conference she's arranging. Before we begin, I'd just like to say a quick but very heartfelt thank you to everyone who's donated money to the podcast through Ko-fi. If you have some money to spare and want to encourage us to do more exciting stuff, the URL is ko-fi.com/kodsnack, and all the money we get goes straight into making the podcast even better in the future. Let's roll the tape.
Glad you're enjoying the conference.
Yeah, I saw that you linked the version from Devox as well. It's excellent. We like to make extensive show notes for the episode, so
that'll be helpful.
Yeah, our idea is that people can look stuff up if they hear something they don't know about. Mm-hmm. So we don't have to cover everything from the presentation.
Good.
We can go any direction we want.
Yeah, I saw that they just posted those, and I'm like, oh well, I just gave this a couple weeks ago. It's not. Every time I give this one, just based on the stress level of the crowd, I have to leave or add certain things, so it's a little bit different. Because when I was giving that one, there was a girl in the front row who, she started crying, there were a couple stories I told today that I didn't tell then, but it was and I left room at the end for I had about probably an hour and a half of people talking to me afterwards, which is kind of happening today too. People are coming up.
I think it's an issue that really hits close to home, where people recognize the problem in themselves or others.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that's kind of hard to talk about publicly in a big group like that. So.
Yeah, I purposely don't do Q&A. I've learned not to ask for Q&A at this one. So.
Sounds like a good idea. And then just leave room for people to come up later, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, sitting in the audience during the talk, every time you stop and ask a question, you definitely got the vibe that it's everyone has things to say, but it's just
I don't want to talk.
Yeah, I don't know how to say it.
I tried to. The ones that I do ask for, I try to be as general as possible.
Yeah.
And it's funny on the video, because I hadn't seen it posted yet, and because they just posted them, and there's already some comments on it from Devox. It's got a lot of upvotes already, and there were 2 downvotes that one guy's like, oh, this is super general, it's common sense. And I'm like, well, yeah, if you're not in that situation, of course it is.
Right.
And another guy is like, oh, well, she would have gotten cancer anyway. And I'm like, yes. I said that. Yes.
Anything else you said that you want to repeat?
He's like, bad advice, she would have gotten cancer anyway.
Helpful.
I don't know if the cancer was the point of the talk.
Okay, thank you. But then, I responded to his comment, and I was like, "Yes, exactly." And then he's like, "Oh, okay. Well, maybe you should see this talk instead." I was like, "Thank you. That's a good reference. I appreciate it." So.
YouTube comments.
Yeah, it's fun. But I just thought it was fun. I was just like, what are they trolling?
It's so weird.
Normally mine don't get comments at all. They get the kind of comments that a lot of girls' videos get. So I have to turn comments off.
Makes sense. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So how long have you been giving this talk for?
This one I've been giving for probably about 3 years now. It just depends. Conference organizers, it's I have a list of talks that conference organizers can pick, and depending on their schedule, what fits, they'll ask me to give this one. And so yesterday I gave the organizers here. They were like, oh well, there's not that many people that have the experience that you do to give leadership stuff, like leadership skills. So I did a full day leadership skills workshop.
Oh yeah.
And then today I did this one, because I can do technical talks too, and I generally do that at tech, but there aren't that many people that have also the soft skills kind of stuff too.
I saw some comment as well that I agree. I don't feel like soft skill is sort of the wrong expression. It's the more important skill, really.
This is the really hard stuff.
Yeah, for me, one of the things that so when I became a CTO, the CEO of my company, he made everyone in the company get a coaching certification. So we all together went through a coaching course it was 3 weeks.
Wow.
Together, intensive. And then from then on, the ones that had never been coaches before, we also had an additional year of training on top of that.
Wow.
And then from then on, so that was just for one certification. And then I got 4 more in different modalities, because I was like, oh, this is interesting. It'll be very useful for my job. And by doing that, I started to understand a little bit more of behavioral psychology and how people work, and especially coming as an engineer, I had none of that before. And not only did I have none of that, I didn't care about any of that. But it also made me not only understand myself better, but how to handle the teams underneath me and the people that I deal with. So it's really, like you said, it's a really important thing. But where I was going with that was the most important thing I learned initially was that, like I said today, we are whole people. And we forget that. It's one of those common sense things that you don't think about until somebody points it out to you.
Yeah, that's one of the notes I had that I wanted to talk to you about was exactly that. Where, you typically talk about the work-life balance, which doesn't make any sense because it's kind of pitting work against life. But work is life, and life is work. It's not like you leave your life and then go to work and then come back. These things are linked. I
say work-life integration,
right?
Especially because we are attached to our devices, and there's no way to really get away. Although I always do we're so I always do at least twice a year I do a completely tech-free week. And that was the first time I did that. My team was very concerned, and which is difficult for me because I felt like I hadn't empowered them enough to handle things without me. But then by the third time I'd done this, they were like, oh yeah, go ahead, we got this, it's cool. There's still 1 or 2 people that need to be managed, that need to check in, but I can completely turn my phone off, completely turn everything off. It's fun when I turn back on my computer and I see that the last time that I've opened up Gmail is 2 weeks ago. It's great. And your brain is so happy when you don't have to think about notifications. I've had my phone on Do Not Disturb for 4 years now. And the reason I did that, I noticed that I was in something called the drama triangle, which is, so everyone is either a victim, a bully, or or the accuser. So you're somewhere in this. So you're either the rescuer. Sorry, the rescuer, the victim, or the bully. And so if you're the victim, then you go to the rescuer, who goes to the bully, but then the rescuer bullies the...
Oh, so the rescuer is the bully.
Switch. So now the bully becomes the victim.
Right.
And they then... so no matter what, and no matter what situation you're in, so if your phone is putting you into the drama triangle by every time you get a phone notification, and you start to feel that fight or flight mode, like you start to feel heart palpitations and get anxious, and you don't know if it's your boss or your girlfriend or your payment is overdue on your rents or something, anything. It doesn't matter what it is. You just get stressed. Then turn it off.
Yeah.
And because the thing that made you happy at one point in time, like, oh, I've got mail, is now, oh no.
Yeah. It could be anything.
Yeah. And on average, we check our phones 80 to 100 times an hour.
Right.
Whoa.
Yeah, so that's one of the shocking things when Apple added a feature where you could see the screen time that you spent during a day. And when I first checked it, it said like, oh, you used the screen 4.5 hours. And it's like, that's crazy. That's a lot of time spent just looking at the screen.
Yeah.
And I hadn't even realized that I was doing it.
Yeah, most of it's completely unplanned as well.
Yeah.
It's not as if I'm working focused for like 4 hours on my phone. That would have been a different thing.
Yeah. My average is about 3 hours a week now.
That's much better.
Something to aim for.
Yeah. And it helps again to have do not disturb on.
Yeah.
But I mean, before again, I was living from my phone. I mean, and that was before I was a CTO.
Right.
Now that I'm a CTO and I'm using my phone 3 hours a week, that should tell you something.
Yeah. So you're not using it at work either. It's in total. Wow.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing. The feeling is like once you get a notification, it's always important. No matter what it is, it has the urgency of like, you have to deal with this now. But then when you turn off notifications, you realize like actually
it wasn't
important. Not at all. Like, that's fine.
Now somebody else, I'm sure, places urgency on those things.
Right.
And I mean, I have these conversations with people all the time that what they feel is urgent is not urgent at all to me.
Yeah.
And that can cause conflict. And you have to become very good at managing conflict.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I do is I have block hours. So times during the day where I will check email.
Right.
And when I do check email on my phone, one of the reasons why it's so quick is, or even on my computer, I use the snippet view. And if I can't tell what that email is about in the snippet, then I don't even pay attention to it. So if somebody is writing a long and rambling email, it doesn't even get paid attention to, or I'll reply back. Like I can even use the Google auto reply to it because Google will read through it and figure out what the most appropriate response is.
Too long didn't read.
Pretty much. My fiance, he spends hours a day stressing out to find the perfect response to an email.
Right.
I'll write something off quickly and I don't care if it has typos.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee you, if somebody is stressing out that I have a typo in the email that I sent them, then it's not something that I care about. And I don't necessarily need to be doing business with that person.
No.
Anyway.
Yeah, and that's the flip side of the coin is that on the other side of the email is someone who's equally stressed out. And if you send a long reply that's like 5 paragraphs details, they're not going to read that. Right. Best case, they're just going to get stressed out themselves.
Yes. And that's another thing about stress. It's one of the things that I mentioned in my talk is that we don't want to talk about stress because it stresses us out.
Right.
And if we see somebody else that's stressed, then it makes us feel stressed because we remember what that feels like in us, even if we're not stressed at the time. Yeah. So when I was at my worst, when I was at a burnout phase of stress, I ended up isolated because everyone else sensed it in me. Yeah. And therefore no one would talk to me, not even my husband. My own husband was like, something's wrong, I'm going to stay away. Yeah. And it wasn't until some really good friends of mine who happened to be very abrasive people. I mean, it takes like an aggressive kind of person to be able to say, I don't care what anybody else says, you need help. And not all of us have that in us normally, but when you but I think we all have the ability to do that.
And probably, but maybe not for everyone. I guess it takes the right type of person to get through as well.
Yeah.
Because if person A said it to you, you would have just brushed them off, and then person B
happened
to be the right person.
You trust,
Yeah. Or you say it at the right time.
Yeah, of course.
And so, I think if I had not been at my lowest point, then I wouldn't have listened at all.
Yeah.
But anyone who came to me then, I think I would have listened.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's an important thing, that if you see, I mean, it's a cliche, but if you see something, say something.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you notice it and you have a drive in you to say something, like there's an old story in the U.S. that there was a woman that she was attacked, and a whole bunch of people saw this attack happen, but not a single person went to help her because they all assumed that somebody else would.
Right.
Oh yeah. Sort of.
Yeah, and I'm sure that some of these people that had seen me get sicker and more stressed, they probably assumed that, well, she's married, her husband's probably going to talk to her.
Yeah, there's always someone else to fall back on, sort of.
Yeah. And meanwhile, my husband was with me every single day, so he didn't notice really that anything was wrong.
It's too gradual.
Yeah, so if you see something, even if it's really uncomfortable, and there's something that urges you to go forward, as a coach, one of the things that I was taught is follow your urges.
Right.
No matter how uncomfortable they are. If you have an urge, go after it. And in a positive way, we do that as entrepreneurs. Like if we have a passion, we follow it, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. If there's something that's telling us we need to interfere here, then that can, honestly, that can save somebody's life.
Yeah.
So do you have any kind of advice for how to go about that? Because one of the difficult things is that, like just telling someone stop stressing is probably just going to get them even more stressed.
Yeah.
So what's the right approach? Like if you see someone that's clearly heading down the path of burnout, what do you do?
Hindsight is 20/20, obviously.
Right.
So if you see somebody that you're like, oh, I was in that position before, they don't want to hear that. Yeah. The easiest thing to do is to go about it by suggesting that people go out and do something with you. So if you got somebody that, one of the signs of burnout is people aren't interested in doing things, nothing's making them happy anymore, they're not taking care of themselves. These are classic signs of burnout. So as a friend, as a concerned friend, you can keep knocking on their door and saying, hey, come out to the bar with me. Yeah. Hey, come walk my dog with me. Hey. And you can just keep being that annoying friend until they actually do it.
Right.
And in my best friend's case, when she picked me up from the airport, she drove me directly to the doctor.
Right. Yeah.
Like she wouldn't even let me go home.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. Like when you can just drag them to places that you know that they like, or even places that they don't like, to force them to do something. And or you can just go sit with them on their couch and spoil Game of Thrones for them and stuff like that until they're so angry that they scream at you and make them do something.
So do something to sort of twist them out of the place they're in.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking it's like maybe it's kind of like someone is stuck in a bad feedback loop where they by themselves they just keep ending back in the same tracks.
Exactly.
And they're pulling them out. Doesn't really matter how.
Exactly. Anything that you can think of that keeps them not being alone, because they are isolated. That they've isolated themselves or other people have isolated them. So reminding them that there's somebody else out there.
So we started kind of in the middle because we actually talk. So I kind of wanted to circle back and like just have you introduce yourself. Okay. Talk a little bit about your background, because just looking at your Twitter bio, there's a lot of stuff there.
So I'm Heather Wilde, and I was one of the founding employees of Evernote. So a lot of people use that for organization, note-taking and all of that. But before that, I actually was in game design. And I had created some really cool games for for Disney with Pirates of the Caribbean. For Paramount, I did a Star Trek online game. And I actually helped to create the first online multiplayer card game. Not Magic the Gathering, but before Magic. It was actually called Chronex. It's really cool. Some people, it just hit 20 years old, so there's a lot of... I'm older than I look. And I've worked with the government. I worked with NASA. I helped to create satellites. I was going to be an astronaut. That was my dream, but... can't go into space, unfortunately. My health isn't great, as we've already established. And I've done a lot of things. Like right now, I work with a consultancy called Rocketeer, and I do the technical side, but I also am trained as a coach. So I generally when I'm coaching people, I'm coaching engineers that want to get better at their people skills so that they can move into management, or also executives that want to learn how to talk to their engineers better. So that's just a side thing that I do. But I also write a column for Inc. magazine. I write for Forbes and the Gulf News and a couple of other places.
It's skills that apply everywhere.
Yeah.
And it was at Evernote that you burned out.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when you're at a company like that, I mean, I think I would have burned out anywhere, because I started working in tech, like working towards a goal when I was 8, because I saw the Challenger explode, and I decided I wanted to be an astronaut. Yeah. Right. And in order to do that, you have to just be go, constantly memorizing and working and so. And I got to NASA at 16.
Right.
And that was like with 3 hours a day of vocal lessons because my family wanted me to be an opera singer.
Oh, okay.
6 hours a day on my computer and with my soldering kit, so doing mechanical and software engineering stuff, and all of my classwork, and I was doing honors classes and so that I could skip classes so that I could get there as fast as I could.
Right.
And then when I was in college, I was working at the Space Flight Center at the same time as going to school and getting my pilot's license and doing all this other stuff. And this was normal to me.
Right, yeah.
So I've always been somebody that did multiple things at the same time.
It sounds like this has been kind of the pattern throughout your life, and it still is kind of like all these things.
Yeah, and when you set these patterns in your life, like it's hard to unset them.
Right.
And I realized later that I had these because my father was a workaholic. He worked on Wall Street in New York, and I saw him probably about maybe 6 hours a week on Saturdays.
Right.
Like he would come home not every weekend, but he would sleep in his office, and then he'd come home, and when he was home, he'd be asleep, and when he was awake, he'd spend all the time that he had with me.
Right.
But then he'd just immediately crash and then go back to work.
Yeah.
And that's my role model.
Right. Yeah. I can see how that leads to burnout. Mid down the road.
Yeah.
So what do you think was different about Evernote that made you crash? Not just like juggling all these things, but it actually coming to a point. Was it the success of Evernote in a way, or like what was the?
So the funny thing is, I was actually living on a sailboat. In a city called La Paz, which means peace.
Yeah.
I was so my home base was there, and I mean, I was in control of my situation, my location. I would come into the office when I wanted to. I would go to the other offices when I wanted to. But because of that, I was a remote worker.
Right.
And as soon as I woke up every morning, like 6 a.m., because I was sleeping till I wake up, I opened the laptop, and I'd often not get out of bed at all.
Right.
And then I'd notice it was like 11 p.m. and I hadn't eaten.
Yeah.
And then I'd be like, oh, time for sleep. And then I'd go to, I hadn't even moved all day. And then it would be like, and my husband, also living with me, would be going about his day and be like, this person is just a lump in the bed, not even moving, not eating, not sleeping, not doing anything. Then I'd just be like, I didn't even talk in the boat. Like, I had a cat that learned how to speak by watching the TV. Like, his meow sounded like Mike Rowe on Dirty Jobs. Because we just didn't talk.
Yeah.
So it was, I think the burnout came because I was a remote worker.
Right. That's interesting, because I'm a remote worker, and it's definitely one of the struggles. Like, what people say when you tell them that you work from home is that, how do you get anything done? Like, like I would just be playing video games all day. But for me, the experience is the opposite. Like, it's really hard not to work all the time.
Especially because you have the paranoia of the remote worker that if you're not working, then people will forget that you exist.
Right.
So you have to not just be on your normal hours, but you have to be on more, because you have to be like on the Slack channel saying, hi, I'm here, hi, I'm here, hi, I'm here all the time. And then you have to put in more work to make sure that they keep you there so that you can keep working remotely and so on and so forth. So I hadn't even realized how much stress I was under because I thought I was living a great life.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly looked like it on paper.
Yeah.
So did you take the remote position because you wanted to kind of have the relaxed life? Like, oh, if I live on the sailboat and, I'm working remotely, I can stress less, that kind of thing? Or?
So I didn't even want to work for Evernote. Right. Like, so I'd worked with Phil at his last company in Boston, and it was in Boston. We'd been there for 5 years, and it was awful. Like, I mean, it was an okay job, but it was annoying, and so like I just wanted to be on my sailboat and just take time off. Right. And then he came after me about 3 times. He's like, I need you to do this position at the company. You're the only one that can do it. Oh. And I'm like, okay. And so like over about a 1.5 time period, like he convinced me to do it. And then, so when we started this up, I felt this responsibility to him and this loyalty to him to get it done.
Right. And that probably made it worse, I guess.
A little bit, because I now I knew that my role was like a personal favor to him to do it, and my role was pivotal to the company in that, like, I was in charge of the customer experience.
Right.
It's not a small thing, no.
Not in a company like Evernote, where it's all about growing the customers and making sure they're happy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I guess that's also the difficulty with the remote work, is that it's really hard to share your work with someone else. Like, it's hard to then hire someone else to help you out with that, because you're on your sailboat somewhere.
Which is another reason why my husband started working with me, because he's like, well, I'm here and I can at least do this. So, but what ended up happening was he took over the customer support team. And just basically decided to run with that and deal with like first level customer support that was like, thank you for the feedback kind of stuff. And I was able to keep working on the infrastructure of like what is experience like for the company.
Okay. So you still weren't working together, but
at least on the same boat, but we had completely different hours.
Right.
So we still never talked to each other.
You were on the same boat.
We're on the same boat.
Why isn't it helping?
It did not help our marriage at all.
Well, I was wondering, do you think the type of work that you do matters a lot for the risk of burning out?
So there's a statistic in the U.S. that the highest burnout/suicide rate is in dentists.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't see that one coming.
No, I didn't either when I looked that one up. But and doctors have another high one. So I think the level of another burnout sign is if your job is chaotic, like if you don't know what it's going to be from day to day. So yes, it depends on your job, but we all can have chaotic jobs like that. So entrepreneurs, like people in startups, it doesn't matter what your position is, but if you're in a startup where you don't know if you're going to get paid from one day to the next, that's definitely, and that's why dentists are kind of the same, because like people that go to dentists in the U.S., like it's a job where they don't have as much of a steady income as other people do, and they have to manage the entire practice themselves.
I mean, teachers, maybe that's my small little world, because my mother is a teacher and burned out. So I've heard a lot about teachers burning out as well.
Oh, teachers is a very thankless position, because they only get paid for the hours that they're teaching.
Right.
But yet there's another 6 hours a day that they have to prepare. They have to be there before school. They have to grade things after school, and then they have to work on weekends, often volunteering to do the thing. Yes, teachers. I love teachers, and I am very grateful that they exist. I just wish they were paid better.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess they're also in the risk position of like really, really caring about the work they do, because it's such an important thing. I guess I suppose people who don't like their job and don't really care too much about it are safer from burnout in that way.
Yes. However, another burnout sign is trauma.
Oh yeah, it's true.
And everyone at some point gets some kind of traumatic experience, and then the other things fall like dominoes. Because I'd mentioned in my talk that I had to take 6 months effectively off of work and really cut back my hours, because when my mother died, I'm not an emotional person. I'm a very rational engineer. I suddenly was crying randomly for no reason. But obviously there was a reason. It was because my mother died.
Yeah.
And she and I weren't close at all. But when your parent dies...
it's a thing.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
And it took a while for me to get back from that, back to my normal state. But thankfully everyone understood that, and they were... It's just... If you don't understand and you don't have the luxury to deal with that, then it's going to take... I mean, it's going to affect your work, your relationships, all of that.
Yeah. So I guess one of the issues is that we tend to undervalue kind of this mentoring or teaching or people caring positions within, especially within technical companies. But I think in society in general, I mean, looking at teachers, how undervalued they are compared to how important they are. Do you think there's something that, I mean, obviously, as we're at a conference, tech conference, and we're having talks about burnout, like people are at least caring about it, like we're talking about it, but like, do you think there's a trend of actually, I don't know, as the industry grows up, that we actually do care more about it and talk more about it, whereas before it was just something swept under the rug?
What I like to say is, if people are asking the question, then they already recognize that there's an issue. If somebody isn't asking the question or isn't showing up, then they're still unaware. So the people that were in my talk today, the people that are running this conference, they are already aware that there is this burnout stress thing that's going on. But a lot of people, and even a lot of cultures, like societies around us, like if I can't give this talk in Mexico, because there it's like, oh, just deal with it and yeah, this is not so it's culturally a thing that like some people. So yes, mentorship is important. And having people that are willing to talk about this stuff is good, but also you have to pay attention to like, where is somebody from, and will they even admit, well, not even admit that there's a problem, because like culturally it may not be a problem to them.
It's true. And you had a great list of like warning signs to look for in your talk as well, and we're linking a video version of the talk, so everyone can go and have a look at that. I really recommend it.
Thank you. It's I say this in the talk as well, that like these are the clinical signs of burnout, and I am not a doctor, but they, like, you can look those up on WebMD, that they are clinical. So you don't need to self-diagnose yourself, but you can, like, if you or somebody you know has those signs, then definitely go seek help.
So this is, I mean, I guess it's all personal, but this kind of a personal question. But looking back at your burnout after Evernote and all that, like, do you think you had to hit rock bottom to kind of accept that, okay, I burned out? Or was there something that you could have done differently, or other people could have done differently to prevent it earlier?
So absolutely, there are things that people can do earlier. Right. That for me, my personality type, I think I had to hit bottom. Yeah. Just because I am a all-in kind of person, and that's not a good thing. But I think if anybody had told me as I was on the way down that anything was wrong, I would have just shoved them away.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
However, I'm also not somebody that has ever had any suicidal thoughts or anything like that. Yeah. So even at my complete bottom, I was able to be pulled out. Yeah. And thankfully, the only thing that I had to worry about was like cancer surgery.
Right. Well, okay.
Yeah, like I mean,
the only thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it could have been way worse.
Yeah.
Now for the rest of my life, like I have to deal with tumors popping up, but thankfully, I'm dealing with them at a younger age, and you only have a certain number of them that grow in your body. So they'll all pop up earlier.
Great, I guess.
So now that I keep myself healthier, I will probably be healthier and live longer than I would have.
Yeah. Oh yeah, so that was another kind of topic that you're touching on in the talk, is that you're mentioning kind of what you can do to deal with your stress levels. Like once you identify, okay, I'm burned out, what do I do? And you were saying, like, that's not yoga.
Yeah.
Okay, so, because that's the obvious one. It's like, oh, just do some mindfulness training or whatever.
Well, mindfulness does work for people. Yeah. Like, I mean, my fiance, like, he does meditation every single day. He stopped doing yoga because it hurts. Like, his knees are actually bad.
Right.
But he used to do yoga every day and loved it. But now he does meditation, and that works for him. For me, I read every day. I read until I fall asleep, naturally fall asleep, and then wake up naturally every day.
Yeah.
For other people, it is really just spending time with their pets, spending time with friends, having a good hobby. Actually, every week I have a game night. We play Beat Saber on the PlayStation.
Oh, yes. I love it.
Yeah, and you can't. And the Beat Saber is actually perfect. Any of those rhythm games are perfect because you have to completely be out of your head, to play that.
Yeah, just go with the flow.
Especially when you get up to Expert Plus, man.
I haven't got there yet.
Another one that's great, also on the PSVR, is Tetris Effect.
Oh yeah, it's wonderful.
Oh my gosh, it is, and they even have a calm level on it that you can play. And I mean, sometimes, like, when I take off the headset, like, I have tears because of how beautiful the music is.
Right.
Yeah, it really works together so amazingly well. It's incredible.
Yeah, and it's so that's what works for me. But again, like, I was a game designer, and I like beautiful games. Another game that I play is it's called Two Dots, and all it is it's on iPhone and Android, and it's just you're connecting dots in a really clean, simple, beautiful UI.
Right.
And it's, for me, that's like a meditation. You're just moving your thumb simply. There's no like crazy flashing banners at you. No noises that are trying to make you do something. Because you want to avoid those stressors. No. There's no time limit. No. Avoid those time limits. So those are examples that I do, but other people, I mean, running, cycling, taking walks, just something that can be active to take you out of your head.
Yeah. So I guess the thing is something that helps you focus on one thing, where you're not distracted by notifications, by thoughts about work, all the things. Like whatever it is that you can do that engages like mind and body.
That's opposite from your workday. So when I'm reading books, I'm not reading business books because I do that all day. I'll read science fiction or like fantasy or even history books, but not business books.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't be programming in our spare time.
Yeah.
I guess.
Right. Yeah. No.
So actually, I do that, but I'll do it in languages that I don't use for work.
Right.
Yeah, it makes sense if it's a different enough thing.
Yeah. Okay, so I have one last thing I wanted to bring up, and that's the Antarcticonf.
Yes!
So I saw this on the Twitter bio. So I've been going to LinuxConf AU, which is a Linux conference in Australia or New Zealand for a bunch of years, which is great. And as a joke, at the end of every conference, they have, like, oh, where are we going to be the next time? Because they switch between cities in Australia and New Zealand. And the joke is always like, next time it's going to be in Antarctica. So I'm glad to see that someone is actually doing it.
Yes. So we were, so some friends and I, we've spoken on every continent. And we're like, well, nobody's going to invite us to go to Antarctica.
Right.
So the only way to check this one off was like, oh, well, we better throw a conference in Antarctica.
Sure.
And people were like, oh, well, you guys should do it because you guys are the leaders. And so Matthew Renzi and I are organizing Antarcticonf in January 2020. It takes place on a cruise ship that leaves from Santiago, Chile. And it's really a mastermind retreat for developers. And the talks are around leadership and development. So like understanding. So there are talks on technology, but a lot of them are about understanding who you are as a developer and how to move forward in your career. And there's no internet on the ship, so 16 days with no internet.
Yeah.
And the people that are coming are very excited about that. And the ship sails past Antarctica for 4 days, and there's an excursion for 1 day where we go and land on and walk around and visit some penguins and stuff.
Yeah.
So we're all very excited to go. And Sean Wildermuth is the headliner. So he's our keynote speaker, and he's also debuting, or he's putting the final touches. So he's hoping to debut his movie Hello World. On the ship.
Right.
Wow.
Cool. Really cool.
Yeah.
It is a bit funny that, as technologists, like, it says something about our time that we're really excited about 16 days with no internet. It's like, wow.
Yeah, like on our site, Antarcticonf.com, like in the FAQ section, one of the questions is, no, really, 16 days with no internet? And we're like, if you're reading this question, that means you need this.
Right.
Yeah. And we're not charging for the conference. The barrier to entry is get yourself on the ship, and then you can come. So it's really probably the least expensive way that you can visit Antarctica. And you'll happen to be around some pretty cool other people if you go. So
just by chance.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, it was super interesting.
Thank you guys for asking me.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah, hope that.
Let me put it this way, Mr. Amer. The 9000 series is the most reliable computer ever made. No 9000 computer has ever made a mistake or distorted information. We are all, by any practical definition of the words, foolproof and incapable of error.